See if I can prop up my phone here.
This is going to make for some gripping film right here.
God.
All right. Hello. Hello, Mr. Kalish. Let's see.
So we've been at Stony Brook, you and I combined, almost 80 years.
Yeah.
You know that, which is pretty amazing.
You started in 70 or
I
71?
think in 69.
69.
I
Okay.
think 69, 70, you know, that academic year.
Right. And I started teaching in 94, 95, but I came to Stony Brook in 89.
Mm.
So.
And you had an interregnum. You had a few years where you went away, got another job.
I know, at Lawrence. And then
So we lured you back.
That's right. When you called me and said, Tina, do you want to apply for the job? And I'm like, you mean Tina Tolia?
And then my sales pitch was, hey, Tina, why don't you come and you'll meet with us. And if you're offered the job, you can refuse it.
Yeah.
You know,
right. In your Machiavellian way, since I didn't know that once you're offered a job like this, you'd never say no.
Anyway, here you are and here I am. So anyway, you and I are the piano department here and have been for all these years, just you and I.
Yeah.
And that's one of what we find to be the wonderful things about Stony Brook is that we are intimate, that it's a small department, that we know each other, that we trust each other, that even you and I share students.
Right.
And all of our groups that play for us are free to go and play for anybody on the faculty. It's a very trusting faculty. We really like each other. We respect each other. And so that's really a wonderful thing. One hears a lot about universities and departments in which if a student of a particular teacher dares to go to the master class of the other teacher, they're sort of expelled from that person's class. Anyway, we're not like that. And that's one of the beauties of this place.
And even when we don't specifically share students, our students can always sign up on the door metaphorically now during online, but for each other, there's nothing weird about that, which is, I think, pretty unusual also.
Very unusual. And, we're different people, you and I, different personalities, different ways of speaking to students, different ways of speaking about music, but ultimately we want the same things. There's a kind of, both of us are really interested that people not be tense, they not injure themselves, that they play with a warm sound that's not forced, that's not brittle, and that we have ways of talking about playing the piano that we hope creates those kinds of students.
Well, and I think it's complementary, the fact that we don't always use the same language. Sometimes something penetrates through somebody's skull through words you use or words I use, even though we're kind of saying the same thing. But then the important part is to make sure that you definitely take credit for it when it does. Right?
Absolutely.
I was thinking about auditions because I think the way we do auditions is cool too. I mean, that we don't pre-screen. So it was really news to me. Calvin told me a couple years ago, he said, oh yeah, it seems a little shady on the website to some applicants when we don't ask for pre-screens. Like, is that a legitimate program? But then I talked to my new student, Kate Miller, this semester, and she said it was so refreshing. She almost couldn't believe it was true that she could anyone could walk in and play for us. And that when she got to school, it was populated by friendly pianists who shared their practice room with her and took her down to the hall and talked to her afterwards. She said it was a kind of dream.
Well, that's a kind of hallmark of the place. We have really collegial students. They like each other. Doesn't matter who they study with.
Right.
Students of yours and students of mine win the concerto competition. It's really, there's no distinction between the students. We're like one really truly happy family there. And with our colleagues in strings and winds, percussion, singers, I mean, it really is a very happy place for us to be.
I feel like our pianists have had, I mean, as best as it can be under the circumstances, a pretty good semester with even being entirely online.
It's been very, very interesting, the difference between Zoom and in person. Of course, in person is much more desirable, but it's fascinating on Zoom that we have to use words. We can't demonstrate, basically. We can't touch our students' arms and show them how they're not relaxed or
On their arm.
press on play on their arms. And we have to use words in a way that's comprehensible to them. And it's interesting, and it seems to work.
Do you want to know a nerdy thing I'm realizing now that I can't do that on somebody's hand is how much I move across the keys when I play in certain directions. And that's sometimes a really pokey sound. It just never quite occurred to me is when people just stay and they don't, I don't know, do your fingers do move along the keys when you play? Because I've played forehands with you.
Yes, yeah, we certainly play a lot of concerts together. Well, that's interesting. Um, I think it's exactly how I feel about just striking directly like that on the keys. That tends to get a more brittle sound, more notey sound.
Right.
So my direction happens to be, I think, from the forearm into the instrument, and I go into the instrument this way
Same.
rather than just from the knuckles down into the finger. So it's my arm that goes into the finger. I think I can modulate the attack differently when I do that. This is very direct, and you tend to get an absolutely direct sound. Harder to make legato.
Yeah, because it's all about the front end of the sound. I think I was thinking about it with a student that I could tell in their ears they were only listening to the beginning of the sound and they were doing that. There was no like in the middle of the sound or the end of the sound. But I always thought I only went that way. But the other day, as I was thinking about it with a chord, I was leaning back and I realized, oh, I'm coming this way sometimes, which,
Yes, yes, I think that's true. That's
yeah,
interesting. I never heard you speak about in all of our conversations the front of the sound and the middle and the back of the sound,
because I
which
haven't.
I talk about a lot somehow. That somehow the sound is inside the attack. That's not just the attack, but it's the continuation of the sound. How do you do that on a piano?
Well, it was two things that made me think of it. One is having to use our words instead of just demonstrating. But the second was talking to Rick about how he talks about a brass attack. And this is not like universal in his instrument, but it's how he does it because he's such a good singer, I think. He talks about using different la, ta, ba, ka, da, all doing different things to the embouchure. But he said all of those front side sounds affect the whole timbre. And so I started to listen to my students and think, does it sound like da or la, and like, oh yeah, there's some analogy there.
Well, first of all, Rick is her husband, by the way. He plays trombone
Trombone.
in the Cleveland Orchestra.
Right.
So let's dispense with that right away. Second thing, I do always talk about a hard consonant or soft consonant with the students.
I never heard that
And
you do that.
Well, I do all the time.
You withheld it from me as a student.
Well, maybe of course we change as
true.
the years go by. I don't know if I said that before. I say it a lot now. That it shouldn't be a consonant like
Right.
a hard T. Maybe a D or a G.
Like ja. Yeah.
So and that's a good image, I think. And then I also talk about how you can do that physically, or how I think you can do it physically. I mean, playing the piano is a wonderful mystery. And uh, if it weren't so interesting, I mean, look at it. It's a very mechanical looking instrument. You pluck down you plunk down the note and there's the sound. So what can you do? Well, there's a lot we can do. So,
So I had this argument for all the summers I was in Eastern Music Festival with my colleague there, Phil Hosford, who's a very smart guy and a beautiful pianist and a very gifted teacher. So I respect him a lot. His contention was there's no way to really change the timbre of a single sound at the piano. He said you can change the articulation or the dynamics, but you can't change the timbre. We perceive timbral differences through the association of two or more notes. Because he's like, it's a mechanical instrument. There's one way to hit the hammer, and he was defying me even at MTNA a few years ago when I went. I was on a panel with him that Bob Wyrick convened, and again he was like, you're deluding yourself."
well, I understand that.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot to imagery in what we say, but you can certainly strike the keys in different ways. And so, quick attacks, slow attacks, uh, the note descends more slowly or quickly. That has an effect on the hammer, of course. So you can say it's about loud and soft. And, in some way that's true.
Well,
But
I was trying to answer Nipun, who is like, well, but we can't really do anything to the sound after it's been struck, which is true. So why would it be important to visualize or imagine the follow through in the sound? But I always think it has to do with how you strike the next sound. If you're in a
exactly.
posture of relaxation preparatory to playing that next note, but
Exactly.
also it deeply affects your ears.
Mm. Well, so that's why after 50 years of teaching the piano, it's still interesting. And
Yeah.
every student is different. And, there's no like one size fits all answer to any of these questions. So each person has to be sort of looked at, evaluated as they are. And how do you speak to different people so that it reaches them? And as you said, maybe your voice reaches them, or the way your vocabulary or mine. We do the best we can with that.
That's the
But
psychology of teaching. Um, I wonder, I know Calvin hoped for some fun facts from us. One thing I was wondering is you didn't destroy the book of life, did you? That because you haven't been bringing it to auditions for quite a while now.
I have it somewhere.
So,
What you want to tell them what you're referring to?
so this is a book Gill has kept, just a spiral bound fat notebook that where he kept where you've kept a tiny annotation of every audition you heard for Tanglewood or for Stony Brook when those were the only two, and then later I know you have many others, Menlo, things like that. But so whereas we might fill out a big audition form, then there would be this brief 2 sentence or 1 sentence with a score. And I was thinking the first time you and I ever saw each other in person was when I walked in, probably in my skirt, to my Tanglewood audition in the basement of Steinway in '88 or something like that, or '87. And that my audition is in that book.
It is, and I never showed it to you.
No, I don't think I want to know.
Well, you got into Tanglewood and you got
I
into
know.
Stony Brook. So
That's true. That's true.
I must have given you a high score.
But there was a point a couple years ago where you just
That's
stopped
it.
doing
I
that.
got sick of doing it. First of all, to write while somebody's playing, it's a little distracting. And it took time. I had to go from the audition form to the book. And by then, our auditions are short.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, you spoke about the fact that we don't do pre-auditions. We don't, have pre-video auditions. And I guess we always felt that these were serious people. They deserved uh, the opportunity to audition live, that a video is never quite the same, that anyway, we didn't eliminate a lot of people on video. People tend not to eliminate a lot. And it took a lot of time to listen to the videos better to hear people. Now, the 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 other side of that is that our auditions are very short because we have so many. I mean, we can have up to 100 live auditions,
Yeah.
usually 80, 90, um, or, somewhere in that neighborhood. And they're all very short. But we, at our auditions, we very often go up and speak to the person who's auditioning, get a sense of who they are, why are they interested in Stony Brook, what's their history, what are their aspirations. It's amazing what you can accomplish in 3 minutes of talking to somebody.
Well, we could probably just speak briefly about the experience of the reunion,
Oh, okay.
because Calvin posed a question about what people get out of the experience at Stony Brook. And that was like the event that sort of described that in a way for everyone.
Well, so of course, having taught so long, both of us, we have a lot of students that are retiring already, strangely. So we have students of many generations. And uh, Tina decided last year that we should have a get together. And so we sort of set up with the help of some of the previous students, an invitation or an announcement about it, little knowing that who we'd maybe have 10 or 15 people come. Well, we had over 70 people
Right.
come.
And the reason we had it at Gil's apartment, the reason we did that is because Gil was like, well, we'll get like 10, 15 people. You did say that. But we sent out to a mailing list of probably over 130, and these were all pianists. And literally from the 70s, 80s, 90s, aughts, 10s, yeah, 50 years of Stony Brook pianists.
And there were people that I hadn't spoken to for many years. There are others that I regularly keep up with and see or email with. I mean, it's a wonderful community. I think that we can say that they treasured their time at Stony Brook, and for the most part, that they think very, very fondly on those days. Most of them are in the field.
Mhm.
They've succeeded. They have a position, or they're in an ensemble, or they're in some way in music. They're doing music, either performance, teaching, uh, administrating, whatever. That is their life for the most part. Because people often ask both of us, are you being ethical by encouraging people when there's so little room in the profession?
Right.
And the answer is that music is a powerful thing that you cannot stop. And there are people of talent who need to develop their talent, who crave music, and life will teach them whether they can be in the profession or how they can be in the profession. It's not unethical of us. It would be unethical of us to say, no, there's no room for you.
Well, and a couple of things which I also think about the ethics of our particular job. At a state school as we are, they are not paying 55,000 a year to come like they might at a conservatory. The affordability of it has always made me feel really good about Stony Brook. And the other thing is we don't make them any promises. I remember in the flip side reading Laura Barger. So Laura Barger is a student from the past has started a wonderful and very thriving new music ensemble, Yarnwire. And in her personal statement, she said, if you want a student who's going to be doing a Carnegie debut, I am not the person.
Mm.
And I thought that was so self-aware. The irony is, I think Yarnwire has played at Zankel, and probably there's some of the few of our piano students who actually now have and will play at Carnegie. But yeah, we don't say we're going to get you to win Tchaikovsky, or we only promise that we'll try our best to send them out as educated pianists with a good sense of themselves that will carry them. Yeah.
And help them to develop the confidence in themselves and to be their best selves. I mean, think of it, after all, we take people, we hear something in them that really appeals to us. And when they leave, we would like them to be the same people, only doing what they did in a more fulfilled way. And we don't care if, and I frankly don't think the most important thing for a musician is to play in Carnegie Hall or to be in a big metropolis. I think the most important thing is to bring music to a community that needs music. Much more important than hanging around a big city and trying to make a go of it there when there's so many musicians.
Right.
Rather to enrich places in the country. And I think that's so important going forward when at a time when classical music is in crisis.
Right. It was my trepidation in returning to New York for the Stony Brook job after living in Appleton, because I felt like, hey, Appleton can use me. Why, I'm just going to be another one of thousands of pianists in New York if I move back there. And I really did think about that.
But you're not. You're making a contribution. You're not just sitting in New York and trying to develop your career.
Right.
You're really helping very serious, talented people to develop their gift.
Right. I told someone in a lesson the other day, I'm like, we're trying to get it so that you can learn or approach any piece you wish, any piece in the world on your own when you leave here without the help of a teacher. That's the goal, right?
Exactly. Yeah.